She said, "My whole family is moving into your house for the summer." I replied, "The more the merrier." Then I called the HOA, who I knew had a strict no long-term guests policy. When they all got hit with a $5,000 fine and eviction notice, my girlfriend announced her entire family was moving into my house for 3 months, like she was telling me what we were having for dinner. Just casual. Matter of fact. Her parents, her 2 brothers, her sister, and her grandmother. 7 people total. I was in the garage working on my motorcycle when she dropped this on me. Didn't even look up from her phone. Said her parents were selling their house and needed somewhere to stay while they house hunted. That my place was perfect since I had the space. I asked when this decision got made. She said her mom called that morning and it was already settled. We'd been dating for 18 months. Megan moved in about 6 months ago. Things were fine mostly. She paid her share of utilities, cooked sometimes, didn't cause problems. But her family was a different story. I'd met them plenty of times. Her mom, Patricia, treated every visit like an inspection, always finding something wrong with my house or my choices. Her dad, Ron, just grunted and watched sports. Her brothers, Kyle and Brandon, were in their 20s but acted like teenagers. Her sister, Emma, was 19 and glued to her phone. The grandmother, Dorothy, was the only decent one, but she had opinions about everything. I asked Megan how long 3 months really meant. She got defensive. Said it would be exactly 3 months, that her parents already had a realtor, that I was being unwelcoming. I told her 7 extra people was a lot. She said families help each other, and I should be happy to help hers. Here's something important. My house is in an HOA community. Expensive one. The kind where they measure your grass and send violation notices if it's too long. I bought here because it was a good investment and the neighborhood was quiet. The HOA rules were in a thick binder I got at closing. I'd skimmed through them when I bought the place 2 years ago. One rule stood out when I thought about it now. No guest staying longer than 14 consecutive days without written HOA board approval. They enforced it strictly too. A neighbor mentioned once that someone down the street got fined when family overstayed during the holidays. The HOA didn't play around. I looked at Megan and said, "The more the merrier." She seemed surprised I agreed so easily. Asked if I was sure. I said absolutely. Family is important. When are they arriving? She said this weekend. 3 days away. That night after Megan went to sleep, I pulled out my HOA binder. Found the guest policy section and read it carefully. Clear as could be. Guests staying longer than 14 consecutive days required written approval from the board, submitted at least 30 days in advance. Violations resulted in fines starting at $5,000. Continued violations could escalate and result in liens against the property. The policy made sense when I thought about it. HOAs wanted to prevent people from running illegal rentals or having permanent residents who weren't on leases. 14 days was generous for visitors. Anything longer, and you were basically living there. I didn't mention any of this to Megan. Friday afternoon, a moving truck pulled up. Full-size truck, like they were relocating permanently. Patricia came in first, already commenting on how the living room layout could be better. Ron carried boxes without greeting me. Kyle and Brandon immediately claimed the guest room and started arguing about bed placement. Emma went straight to the living room and turned the TV to her shows. Dorothy asked politely where she should put her things. Megan directed everyone like a traffic controller, telling people where to put stuff. Acting like this was perfectly normal. I stayed quiet and helpful, carried boxes, moved furniture when asked, smiled when Patricia criticized my dish soap brand. By Saturday afternoon, they were settled in. The house felt different. Kyle and Brandon had gaming systems hooked up to my TV. Emma's makeup covered the bathroom counter. Patricia had reorganized my entire kitchen without asking. Ron had claimed the main couch for his sports watching. Dorothy was knitting on the back patio. Megan seemed happy everyone was comfortable. Saturday night, we had a big family dinner. Patricia cooked, making pointed comments about having to buy proper spices since mine were basic. Everyone gathered around my dining table, like they lived here permanently. They discussed house hunting plans. Patricia mentioned they were being selective because they wanted the right place. That 3 months might not be enough time, actually. I asked what she meant by that. She said 3 months was just an initial estimate, that they wouldn't rush into buying the wrong house just to meet some arbitrary deadline. That we had plenty of space, so taking their time wasn't a problem. Ron agreed. Kyle mentioned it was nice not paying rent for a while. Megan looked uncomfortable, but didn't say anything to contradict her mother. Sunday morning, I went to my office and sent an email to the HOA management company. Told them I had a situation developing with my girlfriend's family staying at my house. That I'd just learned they were planning to stay for 3 months or longer. That I wanted to understand my options and the proper procedures for handling long-term guests, since I'd never dealt with this before. Kept it vague and asked for guidance. The management company responded Monday morning, explained that any guests staying longer than 14 days required board approval, submitted 30 days in advance. Since I was already past the submission deadline and the guests were currently present, this constituted a violation of the policy. They could send an inspector to document the situation, or I could submit a retroactive approval request that the board would review. They noted that retroactive requests were rarely approved and the current situation would likely result in a fine regardless. I replied that I wanted to handle this properly and would appreciate an inspection to understand the full situation. They confirmed someone would come by Tuesday. Tuesday afternoon, an HOA inspector showed up, knocked on the door. Patricia answered and let him in like she was the homeowner. He asked to speak with the property owner. I came out from my office. He introduced himself and said he was there to inspect the guest situation per my inquiry to the management company. I confirmed I had 7 guests who'd moved in recently and were planning to stay for 3 months or longer. He asked if I'd submitted approval paperwork. I said no, that I'd only found out about the extended stay shortly before they arrived and contacted the HOA as soon as I realized it might be an issue. He took notes, counted the people present, asked a few questions about the living arrangements, said the board would review everything and send me their decision. Patricia asked what that visit was about. I said just HOA administrative stuff for having guests. She seemed satisfied and went back to whatever she was doing. Thursday evening, I got an email from the HOA board. They'd reviewed the inspector's report and my inquiry. I had 7 guests in violation of the extended stay policy. As the homeowner, I was being assessed an initial violation fine of $5,000. Additionally, I had 30 days from the date of their official notice to remove the guests. If the guests remained past the 30-day deadline, the fine would increase by $5,000 per person per month, and the HOA could pursue lien proceedings against the property. A formal notice would arrive by certified mail within 2 business days. The email included a PDF of the official letter. I didn't tell anyone yet. Friday, the certified letter came. I was home and signed for it. Opened it in my office. The letter outlined the violation, the fine structure, and the 30-day timeline. It stated that as the property owner, I was responsible for ensuring compliance with HOA policies. Failure to remove the guests within 30 days would result in escalated fines and potential legal action. I walked out to the living room where everyone was gathered, told them we had a problem, showed them the letter. Patricia grabbed it and read it out loud. Her voice got louder with each sentence. She said this was ridiculous, that I should have handled this before they moved in. I reminded her that I didn't know they were moving in until 3 days before they arrived. She said I should have anticipated they might need help and prepared accordingly. Ron backed her up, saying, I should have thought ahead. Megan looked panicked, asked why I didn't mention the HOA rules. I said I told her I was happy to have guests, that the rules were publicly available. She said I should have been explicit about restrictions. I said people usually ask before moving 7 family members into someone's house. Kyle and Brandon wandered in asking what the commotion was about. Patricia explained the fine and the 30-day deadline. Kyle said HOAs were ridiculous. Brandon said this wouldn't hold up if they challenged it. I told him HOA contracts were legally binding and they had legal teams. That challenging it would cost more than complying. Ron said they'd go to the board meeting and explain the situation, that any reasonable people would understand they just needed temporary housing during a home search. I said they could try, but the policy was pretty clear. Patricia said policy should have exceptions for reasonable circumstances. I asked if voluntarily selling a house and taking time to find a new one counted as an emergency. She didn't appreciate that question. Dorothy, who'd been quiet, asked how long they'd been in the house. I said 9 days. She asked about the 30-day deadline in the letter. I confirmed they had 30 days from the official notice date to vacate. She looked at Patricia and said they needed to start looking at short-term options immediately. Patricia said they weren't being forced out because of some overreaching HOA policy. The next morning, Megan tried talking to me in private. Said we needed to figure this out together as a couple. That her family was stressed about finding housing quickly. I told her they had options. Month-to-month rentals, extended stay hotels, short-term corporate housing. She said all of that cost money they hadn't budgeted for. I said I understood, but that wasn't something I could fix. She asked if I'd known about the HOA policy before agreeing to let them stay. I said I'd lived here for 2 years, so yes, I was aware of the HOA rules. She asked why I didn't mention the guest restrictions. I said she didn't ask if there were any restrictions before announcing they were moving in. She said I should have volunteered that information. I said she should have asked permission before making plans. We kept going in circles. She insisted I should have been more explicit. I maintained she should have asked first. Eventually she asked if I'd pay for temporary housing since the HOA situation was technically happening at my property. I said no, I couldn't afford that. She got frustrated and walked out. Patricia called the HOA management office that afternoon. I could hear her from the next room. She explained their situation in detail. The person on the other end apparently wasn't sympathetic, based on Patricia's increasingly frustrated tone. She kept saying things like, "That's unreasonable," and "There must be exceptions," and "This is a family matter." Finally, she hung up and announced the HOA was being completely inflexible. Ron said maybe they should talk to a lawyer about their options. I mentioned that HOA contracts were usually airtight and challenging them rarely worked. He said they'd still look into it. I shrugged and said that was his choice. That weekend was uncomfortable. Everyone moved around the house with obvious tension. Kyle and Brandon made regular comments about HOA overreach. Emma complained about the situation to anyone who'd listen. Patricia was suddenly on the phone with realtors all the time, very motivated to find temporary housing. Ron watched TV and didn't speak to anyone. Megan stopped sleeping in our bedroom. She moved to the guest room with an air mattress. I didn't object. Dorothy approached me Sunday afternoon when no one else was around. Said she understood what had happened. That she didn't necessarily disagree with how I'd handled things. That Patricia should have discussed this with me properly before assuming. That the situation had been managed poorly from the start by her daughter. She said she'd encourage Patricia to find a rental quickly. I told her I appreciated her being reasonable about it. Monday morning, Patricia announced they'd found a short-term rental. Month-to-month lease, available immediately. Cost more than they wanted to pay, but it was furnished and close to the area they were house hunting. They'd be moving out by the end of the week. Megan was going with them temporarily to help them get settled. I said that was good they found something so fast. Patricia gave me a look that could have burned through steel. Said I'd shown my true colors. That Megan deserved better than someone who'd set up her family like this. I didn't respond to that. Tuesday they started packing. The house was chaos again. Boxes everywhere, people hauling stuff to cars, lots of angry muttering. Kyle told me I was cold-blooded. Brandon said Megan should leave me. Emma didn't say anything, but her glares said plenty. Ron came up to me Tuesday evening, said he knew I'd planned this. That I'd known about the HOA rules and let them move in anyway so I could use it against them. I asked him if he'd have moved in if I'd told him explicitly about the rules. He said probably not. I said then it worked out for everyone. He shook his head and walked away. Wednesday morning they were gone by 11. The house was a mess. Furniture rearranged, stuff left behind, my kitchen completely reorganized in ways that made no sense. I spent the afternoon putting everything back where it belonged. Megan came by Thursday evening to get the last of her things. Said we needed to talk. I told her we probably didn't. She said I'd humiliated her entire family. that the HOA situation had caused major financial stress, that her parents had to dip into their house budget for the rental deposit. I pointed out they'd planned to live rent-free at my place for months. She said that wasn't the point. I asked her if she thought it was okay to announce 7 people were moving into my house without asking. She said family helps family. I said asking is part of helping. She said I should have been upfront about restrictions. I said she should have asked if there were any. We argued for 20 minutes, going nowhere. Finally, she said she couldn't be with someone who'd do what I did. I agreed that was probably best. She grabbed her last box and left. Slammed the door on her way out. Her sister sent me a nasty message that night. Called me manipulative and selfish. I blocked her. Kyle sent one saying I was a terrible person. Blocked him too. Patricia sent an email that was probably 15 paragraphs about what was wrong with me. Deleted it after reading the first few sentences. The HOA sent me a follow-up letter 10 days later. Confirmed the guests had vacated within the timeline. Said the initial $5,000 fine still applied for the violation, but the escalation was waived since I'd corrected the situation promptly. I paid it online. $5,000 was expensive, but worth having my house back. My neighbor Jim stopped by a few weeks after everything settled, asked if I was the guy with the HOA guest situation. I said yeah. He said he'd heard about it at a board meeting, that the board had noted I'd contacted them proactively and cooperated fully, that they appreciated homeowners who took the rules seriously. I told him it seemed easier to follow the policies than fight them. He laughed and said most people tried to argue their way out of violations, that it usually made things worse. I said that seemed like a waste of energy. I ran into Megan about 4 months later at a store. She was with some new guy. Saw me and quickly went down a different aisle. Her boyfriend asked who I was. I heard her say nobody important. That was fine with me. Her parents apparently bought a house about 30 minutes away. Smaller than what they'd wanted, according to people we both knew. Couldn't fit everyone comfortably. Kyle and Brandon had to get their own apartment. Emma moved in with a friend. Dorothy went to a senior community she apparently loved. The family blamed me for all of it, for making them rush their house purchase, for the rental expense, for everyone getting split up, for ruining everything. None of them seemed to think that moving 7 people into someone's house without asking might have been the real problem. My house is quiet now. Peaceful. Everything stays where I put it. My kitchen makes sense. I can watch what I want on TV. The guest room is for actual guests who visit for reasonable amounts of time. Would I have let them stay if they'd asked properly? Maybe for a couple weeks if it was a genuine emergency and they were respectful. If they'd gone through proper HOA channels and gotten approval. If Patricia hadn't immediately started running my house like it was hers. But they didn't ask. They announced. They assumed. They treated my place like theirs and me like I should be grateful to host them indefinitely. The HOA gave me a way to fix it without being the direct bad guy, though I was still the bad guy in their version of events. Which was fine. Better to be the bad guy with my house back than the good guy living in chaos for months with no end date. Some people think I should have just talked to them, explained the rules, worked something out. But people who move 7 family members into your house without asking aren't people who respond well to conversations about boundaries. They'd already shown they didn't care about my input. The HOA handled it cleanly. Legal. By the book. Nobody could argue with official policy and fines. It was out of my hands in a way that made sense. I sleep fine at night. House is mine. No surprise invasions. No family that isn't actually my family taking over my space. No Patricia reorganizing everything, or Ron camping on my couch, or Kyle and Brandon gaming in my living room at all hours. People said I was cold for using the HOA against them, that I should have been more understanding, more flexible, more willing to sacrifice my space and peace for people I barely knew. But here's the thing, they weren't asking for help. They were taking what they wanted without permission or consideration. 3 months minimum with no actual end date. 7 people, in my house, decided without me. The HOA just made it official what I already knew. That wasn't acceptable. The fine and the deadline made them leave. Everything else was just them dealing with consequences they created. Some bridges burn on their own. This was one of them. She said, my work husband is just a friend. You being jealous is controlling and shows you have small d energy. I saw her texting him hearts. I replied, you're right. Then I ghosted her, blocked her everywhere, and started dating the woman she was always jealous of. When she showed up at my job crying about closure, she learned that some doors stay shut forever. I, 32M, am a lead diesel mechanic for a commercial shipyard. I fix the engines on tugboats and container ships. It is loud, dirty, precise work. If I mess up a valve timing or a seal, a ship dead in the water costs the company $50,000 an hour. There is no gray area in my line of work. I clock in, I solve problems, I clock out. I don't like drama and I don't like people who play games with definitions. My ex-girlfriend Vanessa, 28F, lived entirely in the gray area. We had been dating for 18 months. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, a job that involved a lot of networking, client dinners, and corporate vocabulary that sounds good but means nothing. For the first year, things were solid. Vanessa was high energy, fun, and affectionate. She had her own apartment downtown, and I have my house near the docks. We didn't live together, but she spent 4 or 5 nights a week at my place. She kept a drawer and a toothbrush, but she maintained her own lease and primary address. That detail is important later. The trouble started about 4 months ago when Todd joined her sales team. At first, Todd was just a name. Todd is so funny, or Todd messed up the coffee order. Innocent stuff. I didn't care. I have female colleagues at the shipyard. Rare, but they exist, and it's strictly professional. I assumed she operated the same way. I trust until you give me a reason not to. But then, the work-husband dynamic started. It wasn't one big event. It was 1,000 little cuts. A slow erosion of boundaries that she insisted was normal corporate culture. She started texting constantly in the evenings. We would be watching a movie, and her face would be lit up by the blue light of her phone, giggling. "Who's that?" I asked one night, pausing the movie. "Just Todd," she said, not looking up. "He sent me a meme about our boss." "It's 10 p.m. on a Tuesday," I said. "Doesn't he have a wife?" She rolled her eyes. "He's separated, or complicated, whatever. He's just a friend, Mark. God, don't be weird." Then came the work lunches that turned into happy hours that went until 9 p.m. She would come over to my place smelling like expensive cocktails and men's cologne, the kind of cheap, musky stuff that lingers in elevators. "Todd hugged me goodbye," she explained when I wrinkled my nose. "He's just really affectionate. It's platonic. Europeans are like that." "Todd is from Ohio," I pointed out. "You're being ridiculous," she snapped. My mind flipped this moment. I started to hate her. Mentally, I was no longer in the relationship. I started to pull back. I stopped initiating dates. I stopped texting her good morning every day. I was observing. When a machine starts making a weird noise, you don't hit it with a hammer immediately. You listen to figure out where the friction is. The friction was Todd, and the lubricant was her blatant disrespect. 3 weeks ago, we were at dinner at a nice steakhouse. Her treat. I had just finished a 60-hour week on a harbor tug engine overhaul. My back ached, my hands were stained with grease despite scrubbing them raw, and I just wanted a nice meal. Vanessa spent the entire appetizer course on her phone. "Can you put that away?" I asked, cutting into my ribeye. "We're at dinner." She huffed and placed the phone face down. "You are being so moody lately." "I'm not moody," I said. "I'm just tired of competing with Todd for your attention. If you want to talk to him, go talk to him. But don't do it on my dime." That is when the mask came off. She looked at me with this mix of pity and disgust that makes my blood boil just thinking about it. "Mark, you are being so insecure. Todd is my work husband. It is a totally normal corporate dynamic. He understands the pressure I am under. You work with wrenches and grease. You don't get the corporate world. You don't understand networking." "I get respect," I said calmly, "and texting another man while you're on a date with me isn't respectful. Call it whatever corporate buzzword you want. It's emotional cheating." "Oh my God," she laughed, loud enough for the table next to us to turn their heads. "This is so controlling. You know what this is? This is small d energy. You are threatened by him because he's successful and funny, and you're just jealous. It's internalized toxic masculinity. You can't handle a woman having a male friend because you're insecure about your own manhood." I stopped chewing. Small d energy. I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had spent a year and a half with. The woman I had introduced to my parents. She wasn't looking at me. Her phone had buzzed on the table. She flipped it over. The screen lit up. A text from Todd. It read, "Miss you already. Save a seat next to me tomorrow." With a heart emoji. She saw me read it. She didn't even look guilty. She looked defiant. "See," she said. "He's just being friendly. The heart is ironic. You wouldn't get it." I sat there for a moment. In my head, I walked through the diagnostics. System. Relationship. Status. Catastrophic failure. Repairable. No. Action. Scuttle the ship. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. I didn't demand she delete his number. That is what a weak man does. He bargains for respect. A strong man knows that if you have to bargain for it, it's already gone. I wiped my mouth with the napkin and placed it on the table. "You're right," I said. Her face softened into a smug smile. "I'm glad you admit it. You really need to work on your insecurity, Mark. It's not attractive. I need a man who is secure enough to let me shine." "No, I mean you're right," I repeated. "I shouldn't be jealous, and I shouldn't be controlling. You should be free to do whatever you want." I signaled the waiter for the check. I paid. I didn't let her pay a dime. I wanted the clean sheet. I wanted zero debt, zero leverage, and absolutely no reason for her to say I owed her anything. "Are you ready to go?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, tapping out a reply to Todd. "Let's go back to your place." "I'm tired." "Actually," I said, "I'm going to drop you at your apartment. I have an early shift." She looked annoyed but agreed. The car ride was silent. She was texting Todd the whole time, giggling softly. I pulled up to her building downtown. Since she had her own lease and her own place, I wasn't kicking her out of her home. I was just returning her to it. "Call me tomorrow," she said, leaning in for a kiss. I turned my head so she kissed my cheek. "Good night, Vanessa." She frowned, got out, and slammed the door. As soon as she was inside the lobby, I drove home. I walked into my house. I went to the bathroom. I took her toothbrush, her face wash, and her specialized shampoo. I went to the bedroom. I took her clothes from the drawer. I took the shoes she left by the door. I put everything into 2 garbage bags. I put the bags in the trunk of my truck. I drove back to her apartment building. It was midnight now. I didn't buzz up. I left the bags in the vestibule with the doorman, who knows me. Giving these back to her, I told him, handing him a 20. She left them at my place. "Don't buzz her until I'm gone." Then I drove home. I sat on my couch, opened my phone, and went down the list. Phone number blocked, Instagram blocked, Facebook blocked, LinkedIn blocked, Venmo blocked. I didn't send a breakup text. I didn't write a letter explaining my feelings. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a fight. She said I had small d energy for caring? Fine, now I don't care at all. I ghosted her, completely. The next morning I went to work. I felt lighter. Around 10 a.m., my blocked folder started logging attempts. Blocked call from Vanessa, 4 attempts. Blocked message, Mark? Why is my stuff with the doorman? Blocked message, is this a joke? Pick up. Blocked message, you are being so childish. Call me. I didn't respond. I kept working on the valve assembly. By the afternoon, she switched tactics. She called my best friend Dave. Dave works with me at the yard. He knows the score. Dave walked over to my station while I was calibrating a fuel injector. "Hey," Dave said, wiping grease off his hands. "Vanessa is blowing up my phone. She says you're having a mental breakdown and threw her out." "I didn't throw her out," I said, not looking up from the engine. "She has her own apartment. I returned her property to her legal residence. Legally, I just did her a favor." "She said you broke up with her because she has a friend named Todd." I put down the wrench. "She told me my discomfort with her emotional affair was small d energy and controlling. So, I removed the control. She's free to be with Todd. I'm out." Dave laughed. A deep belly laugh. "Small d energy? Coming from the guy who lifts engine blocks? Damn, okay, I'll handle it." Dave texted her back. "Mark is fine. He just realized you two aren't compatible. He asks that you respect his space." She didn't respect the space. She showed up at my house that night. I have a Ring doorbell. I was inside eating a steak and watching a documentary about WW2 logistics. My phone buzzed. Motion at front door. I checked the camera. It was Vanessa. She was banging on the door. She looked furious. "Mark, open the door. You can't just ghost me after 18 months. This is abuse. This is gaslighting. I know you're in there." I didn't move. I didn't turn on the porch light. I sat there and ate my steak. She banged for 20 minutes. Then she started crying. Then she started screaming that I was a coward. Eventually, my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, a 70-year-old woman who takes no prisoners, came out onto her porch. Honey, Mrs. Gable yelled, he obviously doesn't want to talk to you. Go home before I call the cops for disturbing the peace. Vanessa left, screeching tires as she peeled away. The next day, the flying monkeys arrived. Her friends, the squad. I got DMs from 3 different women telling me I was a misogynist, that I was fragile, that I couldn't handle a strong woman with a career. Friend 1, you are pathetic. She was just networking. Friend 2, real men don't ghost. Friend 3, you'll never find anyone as good as her. I didn't argue. I blocked them all. See, here is what guys need to understand. Explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you is a waste of time. It's like trying to explain aerodynamics to a fish. They don't live in your world. Now we need to talk about Elena. Elena, 30F, works as a logistics coordinator at the shipyard. She manages the flow of containers, heavy equipment, and the massive trucks that come in and out of the port. She is sharp, professional, and carries herself with a quiet confidence that is terrifying to insecure people. Vanessa hated Elena. I had introduced them once, about a year ago, at a company barbecue. Elena had been polite, shaken Vanessa's hand, asked her about her job, and then spent the rest of the time talking to me and Dave about supply chain issues. On the car ride home that day, Vanessa had gone off. That Elena girl wants you, Vanessa had seethed. What? No, she doesn't. We talk about shipping manifests, I said. She's a pick-me girl, Vanessa argued. She acts like one of the guys to get attention. She was looking at you with hungry eyes. You need to stay away from her. I don't want you talking to her unless it's strictly work. I had laughed it off, but to keep the peace, I had distanced myself from Elena. I kept our interactions strictly professional for a year. I respected the boundary Vanessa set, even though she refused to respect mine with Todd. But now, I was a free man. 2 weeks after the ghosting, I ran into Elena in the break room. She was reviewing a manifest. She looked tired but good. Hey Mark, she said. I heard through the grapevine you're single. Dave has a big mouth. Dave is a town crier, I smiled. Yeah, I'm single. Sorry to hear that, she said, taking a sip of coffee. Don't be, I said. It was overdue. Turns out I had small d energy because I didn't like her texting another guy hearts. Elena choked on her coffee. She actually laughed so hard she snorted. No way, she gasped. She said that? To my face. Elena shook her head. Wow. Well, for the record, standing up for your boundaries is pretty big energy in my book. Most guys just roll over. We looked at each other. There was no drama, no games, just 2 adults who respected each other. I'm gonna grab a beer at the Rusty Anchor after shift, I said. You wanna join? I'd love to, she said, but I'm buying the first round. I just got a bonus. We went out. We talked for 3 hours. We didn't talk about vibes or networking. We talked about work, about our families, about how hard it is to find decent people these days. We started dating. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was steady. It was easy. Elena didn't need constant validation. If I was busy working late, she texted, "Copy that. Dinner is in the fridge." If we went to dinner, she left her phone in her purse. It was peace. It had been 6 weeks since I ghosted Vanessa. I was moving on. I assumed she was happily work-husbanding with Todd. I was wrong. Apparently, my total silence drove her insane. Narcissists hate being the villain, but they hate being irrelevant even more. By blocking her and not giving her the closure fight she wanted, I had denied her the victim narrative. She couldn't tell people I screamed at her. She could only tell people I vanished. And then she found out about Elena. I had posted one picture on Instagram, just a photo of 2 beers on a table at sunset, tagging Elena. No caption, just the tag. Vanessa must have been stalking me from a burner account. Last Friday, I was in the shop. It was 3 p.m. I was covered in grease, working on a piston assembly for a tugboat. My radio crackled. It was dispatch. Mark, we have a situation at Gate 4. A civilian vehicle is blocking a delivery truck. The driver is refusing to move and is demanding to speak to you. Security is about to tow it, but she's screaming your name. My stomach dropped. Not fear, annoyance. Copy, I said. I'm en route. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked the 1/4 mile to the main gate. There she was, Vanessa. She had parked her Audi right in front of a flatbed truck carrying steel plates. The trucker was honking. Security guards were yelling. She was dressed up like sales meeting, dressed up. Heels, blazer, full makeup. She looked completely out of place against the backdrop of cranes, rusted steel, and industrial grit. She was arguing with Jerome, the head of security. "I just need 5 minutes," she was pleading. "He's my boyfriend." "Vanessa," I said, walking up. She spun around. Her face lit up with that manic hope. "Mark, oh my God, finally. You blocked me everywhere. Do you know how traumatizing that is?" "Move your car," I said. "You are blocking a commercial shipment. That's a federal violation in a secure port." "We need closure," she yelled, ignoring the massive truck behind her. "You can't just end it like that. We need to process this. And I saw you're with her, that truck stop girl Alina." "I knew it. You were cheating on me the whole time, weren't you?" "The audacity." "I didn't cheat," I said. "I left. You were the one texting Todd Hartz. Remember? Small D Energy?" "That was a joke," she shrieked. "You threw away a partnership for a joke. I love you, Mark. Todd means nothing. He's actually really annoying. I just like the attention. I can cut him off. Just come back. We can go to therapy." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw a woman who used people. She used me for stability. She used Todd for attention. And now that her stability was gone, she was trying to claw it back because Todd probably didn't want to pay for her dinners or listen to her drama. "I don't want therapy," I said. "I want you to leave my job site." "You're dating her just to spite me," she accused. At that moment, a golf cart pulled up. It was Elena. She was the logistics coordinator. Obviously, she'd been called because a truck was blocked. Elena stepped out holding a clipboard, wearing her hard hat and vest. She looked at the scene. She looked at Vanessa. "Is this the obstruction?" Elena asked me calmly. Vanessa glared at her. "You stole him, you homewrecker." Elena didn't flinch. She didn't yell back. She just looked at Vanessa with professional indifference. "Ma'am," Elena said, "you are trespassing on a MARSEC Level 1 facility. You are blocking a scheduled delivery. If you do not move your vehicle in 30 seconds, I am authorizing the Port Authority to tow it and impound it, and I will have you barred from the premises permanently." Vanessa looked at me. "Mark, are you going to let her talk to me like that?" "She's doing her job," I said. "Something you wouldn't understand. Go home, Vanessa." "Jerome," Elena said to the guard. "Call the tow truck." "No," Vanessa screamed. "Fine, I'm leaving." She got in her car, slammed the door, and reversed aggressively, nearly hitting the security bollards. She sped off, middle finger out the window. Elena watched her go, then made a mark on her clipboard. "Sorry about the delay," Elena said to the truck driver. "You're good to clear." She looked at me and winked. "Dinner at your place?" "You bet," I said. It has been a week since the shipyard showdown. Vanessa tried to spin the story on social media. She posted a long video about toxic men and narcissistic discard. It didn't go the way she planned. See, she forgot that we live in a semi-small community. People talk. People knew about Todd. A mutual friend sent me screenshots of the comments on her video. Friend 1, "Didn't you brag about your work husband buying you lunch every day?" Friend 2, "Wait, Mark is the most chill guy I know. If he blocked you, you probably deserved it." Friend 3, "Isn't this the guy who fixed your car for free? Maybe stop posting." She deleted the video. As for Todd, I heard through the grapevine that once Vanessa was single and turned her full, high-intensity focus on him, he panicked. He liked the flirting when she was taken. It was safe. When she showed up at his door expecting a relationship, he ghosted her too. Irony is a beautiful mechanic. I'm doing great. Elena and I are planning a weekend trip up the coast. She drives her own truck, pays for her own beer, and doesn't need a work husband because she respects the man she comes home to. The other night, Elena and I were sitting on my porch. "Do you miss the excitement?" Elena asked jokingly. "The drama? The high-stakes sales pitch?" "Not even a little bit," I said. I checked my phone. 0 unread messages. 0 drama. Just a notification that the tide tables for fishing tomorrow were looking good. "You know," I said, putting my arm around her, "I think I finally found the right energy." "Big D energy?" she smirked. "No," I said, kissing her forehead. "Peaceful energy. That's the only kind that matters. Fellas, listen to me. The moment she insults your manhood to defend her disrespect, the relationship is over. Don't argue. Don't fight. Don't try to prove you're secure. Agree with her. Tell her she's right. and then vanish. There is nothing that haunts a manipulator more than a victim who refuses to play the game. And if you're lucky, you'll find an Elena who was waiting for you to stop playing games too.